This is another one of the Dr. Sadler Stories videos that viewers and subscribers have been asking for. You know, stories about my personal life. There's a lot of memories that these allow me to bring up, and that's kind of fun. So what I'm going to talk about this time is not particularly fun, but it was life-changing in some significant ways. And it was a major injury that I had about a little bit more than 7 years ago. And it happened out at Montauk, which is on Long Island. It's about as far out as you can get on Long Island. And we would go out there before the big tourist season started and spend, some time out there. My wife, who did all the booking for this and who'd been going to Montauk for quite a long time, and then my two kids. And, we'd spend a lot of time on the beach and eating seafood and taking it easy and having a good time. And, you've got to be a little bit careful because it is the ocean. So I wasn't being careful one day, but I didn't think this would actually happen to me in this way. So it was towards the end of one of our trips out there. And we'd been staying there for a while. And it was kind of the waves were a bit rougher that day. And so I was, going out to wash off. We'd done all sorts of things like buried ourselves in the sand. And I was going out into the waves, and they're pretty high at that time. And what I remember was turning because my daughter it was very windy, and she was yelling something, and so I was looking up towards her, and then I got hit by a wave, and it was a big one, and it knocked me under, and I heard something like sort of like I could hear it in my head, but I think it was a reverberation of what was going on, a kind of pop, and suddenly there was all this pain just kind of flooding me from my leg, and I didn't know what was going on. So, by that time I was underwater. Unfortunately, the wave is moving you towards the shore. So as the wave receded, I grabbed onto the sand and started moving upwards. And I was in a lot of pain already, like probably the worst pain of my life. And I've done a lot of painful things, including like branding a hand and getting shocked by electrical currents and, slicing my thumb open, all sorts of stupid things, getting hit in the head with a rock. This was probably the worst pain I'd ever felt. And I knew I had to get myself out of the surf. So I did that, and I got up there, and I immediately tried to get up. And as it turned out, I'd actually damaged beyond repair 2 ligaments, actually more than 2 ligaments, I'll talk about that in a moment, but 2 main ligaments in my left knee. So, the ligaments are the things that kind of hold your knee together and stabilize it. There's 4 main ones in your knee, and so, damaging 2 of them, effectively breaking them, that's a big problem. So I tried to stand up, and immediately, my left knee it was like looking at a chicken leg. It was like flopping around. That was scary. And by that time, my daughter was coming down to the beach, and, my wife could tell there was something wrong. And eventually, everybody's around me, and we got me able to sit up. And then it got away from the actual beach and moved up a bit, and then it was like a whole production, because how do you get somebody who's a big guy out of a place like that? They ended up having to put me in the back of a pickup truck, and then it was a ride to the local hospital where they started doing x-rays and tests and things like that. And the whole time, man, my leg was just killing me. And I think they probably must have given me some painkillers at the time, but I don't really remember. And it was, it was supposed to be stabilized. And so, my wife took the kids, and they were pretty young. So seeing their dad go down like that is pretty scary for them as well. So she took them to get some tacos And, I had to be there in the hospital because, where else are you going to go? And so, eventually they discharged me, and I don't remember exactly what they had at that time, but they had something to immobilize my leg. It might have been one of those plastic, almost like cast-like things. And then it was, we had to move. I didn't do any moving, obviously. I was incapacitated, but my wife and kids had to move our stuff out of the second floor cabin that we were staying in into a first floor cabin. The people who, we were staying with, they had a beach motel. They, accommodated us, which was great. And all I remember is watching some TV, talking with, my wife and kids, being in a good bit of pain, and, trying to find positions that I could get comfortable in so I could get some sleep. And then after that, it was, that was basically our last day or so at Montauk, and then we had to drive back home to the Hudson Valley. And if you don't know the geography of New York, so the Hudson Valley is north of New York City, right? And Long Island is east of New York City. So you've got to go, and Montauk is at the very end of Long Island. So you got to go all the way across Long Island and then back up through New York City and then up into the Hudson Valley. And we were at the time living in what's called the carriage house apartment, which is essentially an apartment above a garage. So all these stairs. I think they gave me some crutches as well, which was nice. So I've got this thing on immobilizing my leg, and then some crutches, and we had to get up the stairs. And then once I was in there, for at least a couple days, I wasn't going much of anywhere. I remember vaguely that taking a shower was kind of dicey and also painful, because anything that I would do involving that knee made things hurt, and there wasn't stuff there to completely stabilize it when you're say taking a shower or something like that. And so I was pretty laid up, and it was definitely not an ideal time for that to happen, right? There was various things going on. The kids were there, and I don't even remember, quite frankly, what we did over the next couple days. But what I do remember is over the rest of the summer, as I was able to start moving around, there were two things, basically. One was a whole set of miscommunications with my doctor. And so the first thing I had to do was actually figure out how much damage there was. So I went to a place that had, MRIs, and they put me in there. And I didn't like that. You get a little claustrophobic, especially if you're a big person getting into one of those machines. But you sit still, and then they gave me the bad news. 2 ligaments, completely damaged. No way. It wasn't. You don't get partial tears when you're in your 40s, is what they told me. So, they were completely torn. And then my doctor at the time told me, you can have these replaced with ligaments from cadavers, but you need to get into shape before you do that. Later on, he said, oh, no, you misunderstood what I said. But I think he was probably quite unclear. He gave me the impression that I needed to rehab it and lose a lot of weight and stuff like that before we would do anything like that. And then the next year when he saw me, he's like, well, how come you didn't get that fixed? And I said, because you told me I had to do these other things first, and that didn't happen. So, there's all of that. And I never did end up getting it replaced. The 2 ligaments, the ACL and the MCL. I also tore some of the smaller ligaments in the kneecap itself, as our doctor here, who's a sports medicine guy, was able to figure out looking at it. And, the remedy for this, if you don't get the ligaments replaced, is you just strengthen the muscles and everything else around it as best as you can. and try to avoid taking any sharp curves. So running is out of the picture. Things that I really enjoyed in the past, like say racquetball. I used to play that back at FSU and enjoyed that quite a bit. And I thought about getting back into it down the line, but that's not feasible. If I wanted to do things like soccer, I'd have to avoid sharp movements because it can put the things out of whatever, out of alignment, and that's painful as hell when that happens. So, what I did is I strengthened everything, and the last couple times that I've been to the doctor, he said, well, you maxed out on that. You can't get it any stronger than it already is. So, you've basically reached the peak of what you've got available for that knee. And it does give me some trouble, every once in a while. It'll be a little loosey-goosey if I take long walks. It can hurt depending on the weather. My other knee, compensating for it, has probably taken a lot of abuse over the years as well. The other thing that happened was I was on crutches and with a brace on that knee, usually worn if I was wearing shorts, obviously I could just wear the brace. And if I was wearing pants, the brace was kind of cumbersome. So I'd wear it over my pants, like jeans or corduroys or dress pants or stuff like that. And for most of the summer, I was on crutches for quite a while with two crutches, right? And then I'd go to the grocery store and I'd take the cart, and then I could have the crutches in the cart and use the cart almost like people use a walker, right? And that was okay, but then I had to be careful if I got, was getting something, make sure I use a crutch. And then over time, as things got stronger, I didn't need it so much. I know that I was still, by the end of the summer, by August, I was still using both crutches because I actually went to an academic conference in Grand Rapids for the International Society for McIntyrean Inquiry, and I flew from JFK to Chicago and then took a car from Chicago to Grand Rapids, and then drove back again and did that. And the driving wasn't bad because, if it had been like my right leg, that might have been a bit of a pain, but left leg, it's not that big of a deal. But then, going from place to place, it was at Grand Valley State University for part of it. So I had a lot of walking to do. And I just remember it was hot as hell because it was August, in the Midwest. And I've got, I'm dressed in my academic gear, with dress pants and a shirt and tie and a jacket and, my dossier and my crutches and ambling around from place to place to place. And then, getting back to the conference hotel. And everyone was a good sport about it, And so that was kind of interesting. And then it was the start of the school year, and I was teaching at Marist College in Poughkeepsie, New York. And I remember that semester, most of that semester, I had the brace. And I think at the very beginning, I was using two crutches, and then you get down to one crutch. And then after a while, you're supposed to go without crutches at all, but still the brace. And I think that's where I was by December. So for some of those classes that I was teaching, I was, kind of a little bit handicapped. And, when something like this happens, especially if you're generally pretty healthy otherwise, it really drives home to you how quickly things can go topsy-turvy and how lasting damage can happen to your body. I mean, when you're in your teens and 20s, it's not like bad things can't happen, but if you tear in, a ligament, it might be only a partial tear, and they'll probably fix it for you, or, but when you're in your 40s, things are, you're in middle age, and you really got to start being more prudent and careful with your body. And this is one of those things that, who could have predicted it? I mean, I suppose somebody with a godlike understanding of wave mechanics, perhaps, in the human body. But it was one of those fluke things that just happens to you. And, since then, I have been active. I walk quite a bit. I exercise. I do leg work. When I go into the gym, I've got to wear some braces for my knees, just to make sure that I don't screw anything up. But I'm able to live a pretty active life. But there's quite a few things that I just can't do, or if I do, I pay a toll for it. Like I have run a few times since then, but that really takes it out of you when you're doing that, and it's always kind of taking a chance. You never know if something could go badly with that. But it was that was really like the first thing that I did where I really screwed something up on my body in a permanent way. Like I said, I almost cut my thumb off when I was a kid. I was carving towards myself like a dummy with a box cutter, and it slipped, and I cut halfway into my thumb. I've had some falls, and certainly like some accidents with skateboards and bikes, and even car crashes, but nothing that ever like changed the condition for me for good. And hopefully this will be the last one until the ultimate change for the body, which is dying. Maybe I can keep myself from getting any other injuries of that sort before that. But if not, I know how to roll with it. And it really does change your perspective. You take so many things for granted, and then you're hobbling around. You can't go very far. It's painful to move. You start to think about how accessibility figures into things, and why isn't there an easy walk over here? Why does everything have to be upstairs, where you can't use the elevator and have to go up several flights of stairs? Those sorts of things really bring it home to you. So that's the story of tearing these two ligaments in my left knee. Hopefully that'll be all the ligaments I tear going forward. I found a good way to live without them. Live with the limited capacity that it leaves my left knee. I'm pretty lucky, pretty fortunate that it's not worse than it is, I think you can say. And so that's the story.